High school sports are great. They are a fun way for teenagers to participate in local activities and as well as learn valuable life lessons. Now, sadly, drugs have become a problem over the past 2 decades. I'm a current high school student, and as such, I can see clearly what is the problem, and I also think I have a way we can fix it. Now, there are people invested into trying to solve this problem, but what we need as a society is a way to deter and detect drug usage, as well as helping the families who are affected by these kids who turn to drugs. Now, MRSDT. This stands for Mandatory Randomized School Drug Testing, which is a topic I will be talking about later in this speech. I believe that widespread implementation of this technique will result in a decrease in drug usage, promote higher team unity, as well as better support from the community. Today, I will be telling how we can slow teenage drug usage, as well as a couple alternative activities that teenagers can choose to partake in without the pressures of drugs. Now, let's begin. Popular magazine, Eric Digest, states that some of the negative effects that a student athlete on drugs can have is physical, emotional, as well as educational. Now, the physical, numerous health concerns, heart disease, addiction, there are depression, there are many, many things that can go wrong with you. It's just not a good idea. Emotional, your whole mental health can just get incredibly out of whack, and it's not a good thing. Educationally, twice as likely to drop out of high school, and very, very fewer chances of graduating on time. Now, we all know that drugs are bad. This is not a new fact. But what we don't understand is the far-reaching, family-destroying effects and negative consequences that drugs can have. Now, let me tell you a short story. Imagine, if you will, that you are participating on a football team. Your team has actually had a good season, and for the first time in your high school career, you've won a playoff game. You're all jazzed up. You're excited for the second game. But the night before the big game, you get a call from your head coach. He calls an emergency meeting. Jacob, the star running back, had been found with marijuana, and your team is disqualified. What was started as an incredible journey to go to state, somewhere you've never been before, it's just been thrown down the drain. This is not, the consequences are very real for the team, don't get me wrong, but it goes farther than that. It affects Jacob, the team, the whole school, and to a larger extent, the community, who had been cheering and rooting for these boys. This is one example of the negative effects that drugs can have. Now, there are many ways that people talk about trying to solve the drug problem, doing this, doing that. Mandatory randomized school drug testing. Now, this is a program where students in extracurriculars, mostly sports, but band, fine arts, those count as well, will be randomly selected and go in, have a drug test, and it is a very effective way of detecting, obviously, as well as deterring drug usage. Now, excuse me. Now, one of the things that people say against this mandatory randomized MRSDT, I will be referring to it as that for the remainder of the speech, is cost effectiveness. Cody Westerland of the Paxton Record says that drug testing is not cost effective, it is cost prohibitive, in fact, for the amount of information gleaned. What cost prohibitive means is the money that you dump in does not equal the information gained out. Now, in an interview with fellow high school athlete Paige Hill, she agrees consumption of drugs is far too high at our high school. But she also thinks that were MRSDT implemented, that participation would go down because of the high numbers of athletes who are already doing drugs. If they realize that, oh, hey, I'm going to be tested for drugs, well, I'm just not going to join. And, well, in a small town, that can be a problem. However, in another article from the Institute of Educational Sciences, there's evidence that if this was implemented, 0% would, let me start over. From the Institute of Educational Sciences, they did a study on a group of schools from the 2007 to 2008 school year, and it documented very varying factors, and one of which was participation, and there was a 0% increase or decrease, with the variable being MRSDT. Now, today I have shown you some of the positives about implementing MRSDT, and now I'm going to talk to you about some alternatives that you can do. We have in Hubbard County a group called We Decide, which is primarily, it's called Hubbard County Youth Uniting Against Alcohol. So it's about alcohol, not drugs, but the premise is the same. And what they've been talking about is hosting different events, movie nights, bowling, school dances, things on the weekend that are fun for teenagers to do, but also away from alcohol and away from drugs. These would be very smart to be implemented. In an interview with former football coach Thomas Arndt, he believes that 80% of the problems with drug athletes start in the home, in the families. Kids generally don't just say, hey, I'm going to do drugs. That's cool. What it is there's a lot of things going wrong in the families that cause kids to turn to drugs. He believes that if we were to start in the family and work outward, that would also have a good impact on drugs. Now, in another report, implementing this MRSDT at a high school in Pennsylvania, when there was no drug test, there was a report of 22% of the student athletes were using drugs. Now, over the course of 30 days, with implementation, this same number dropped to 16%. Think of how far it would drop in a year, in a decade. Now, today I've talked about MRSDT, the problems that are drugs, and also a couple ways we can solve them. Now, I do believe that the pros outweigh the cons, and it's not perfect, I'm not saying it is, but I do believe that widespread implementation of this technique would not only provide some benefit, but could be a launching pad to which other measures could be taken.